Another scandal involving an alleged sexual assault has erupted in the AFL. This time, a number of players from the Sydney Swans football team have been spoken to by police after an alleged incident occurred in the early hours of Monday morning. I'm Samantha Selinger-Morris, and you're listening to the Morning Edition from The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald. Today, The Age's chief AFL writer Jake Niall on what we know now. And just a note, this masthead is not suggesting the players are under investigation by police, just that they are assisting with their inquiries. Welcome, Jake, to the podcast.
Oh, thanks, Samantha.
Now, Jake, we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon, so can you just tell us what you know so far about how this incident has unfolded?
Well, the Sydney Swans played against Essendon on Sunday late game. By the time they get back to, you leave the bus from the ground, you're looking at, after 8 o'clock. Some of the players have gone out, and there's a group of 5 players that have stayed behind as a result of an incident that police are investigating at the hotel room.
Good afternoon. The Sydney Swans are today in turmoil. The club confirming several players are embroiled in an alleged incident as Victoria Police investigates reports of a sexual assault at a Melbourne hotel.
Police swarmed the hotel room on Monday morning, and they took CCTV, and people in the hotel obviously have been spoken to.
In the early hours of this morning, police will allege this sexual assault case has occurred at the Pullman Hotel in Melbourne, which is where the Swans were staying.
We had uniformed and plainclothes police go in and out of the Pullman Hotel yesterday.
We're extremely shocked and disappointed that this has taken place and that the players have found themselves in this situation. Given it's a police matter right now, that is all that we can say.
Yeah, obviously extremely disappointed with what's happened, and understand the questions, and we'll update as we gather more information.
We've named 4 of the players, and 2 of them are star players in Isaac Heaney and Chad Warner, and there's also James Jordan and Riley Bice. The players have not been formally interviewed by the police, but of course, in an investigation of this type, Sam, the police have to get the information first from those making the allegations before they do formal interviews of record with players, either whether that's as there's an allegation against one or more of them, or as witnesses. And as it stands now, the players, it's all but certain that they won't be playing on the weekend, and that there'll be some sort of punitive action taken, not because of what they've allegedly done or not done. They haven't got to that stage yet in the process. The AFL doesn't step into criminal investigations. It lets that take its course, but they can be suspended for getting themselves into that position by the club and the league.
Okay. And you mentioned that police have spoken to 5 players of the Sydney Swans. We've named 4 of those players. Why at this point hasn't the 5th player been named?
Well, the 5th player, there's pushback from a representative of the 5th player to say that he wasn't involved. Now, I can't at this point answer that, accurately. I want to say accurately with full, with the full facts of that. There's a lot of question marks over what has actually occurred, and there's obviously the interest in this as a story. It's one of the biggest stories you'd find in the AFL, and it will have huge bearing on the finals series, on all sorts of things, the reputation of the Swans, the individuals' careers. It's got a lot of potential fallouts. Then again, we don't know enough about the incident, right? Except that there's a sexual assault allegation.
And so who has actually been talking about the allegations since the reporting emerged on Monday? I mean, have we heard from the alleged victim? And what about the AFL and the club's leadership?
Well, Matthew Pavlich, the club CEO, he fronted a media conference yesterday, but he really just read a statement and didn't answer any questions. And then the coach, Dean Cox, and they both expressed disappointment was one of the words used. That was Matthew Pavlich, the CEO. Is a former champion player at Fremantle, and a figure of renown in the game, an absolute great of the game. And Dean Cox, the coach, he he would feel this very personally. My understanding from what I've been told is the Swans the words that we use are filthy with the players getting themselves into this position. They, of course, will be caught between defending their own values, their own reputations, their own brand, and at the same time, making sure the players are held accountable, but the players are valuable assets for the club. It's always a very tricky situation, and this is why the AFL will step in and the AFL's got to be involved. They're not talking directly to the players, but they are dealing with the Swans officials. Tom Harley, who's a senior figure at the AFL, he's basically the 2IC. He was the club CEO for only a year ago. So so he's involved in that. And of course, the club, the AFL CEO Andrew Dillon. I mean, the buck stops with him when it's something this serious. He was the former legal counsel of the AFL. He's a lawyer. He's right on top of it. And there's a number of other people. The integrity unit, the AFL have their own integrity unit to deal with matters, but the AFL can't interfere with police processes. So this will play out through the police before the AFL deals fully with it. It would be my understanding of how it works. And that's over a lot of these cases that I've seen. Regrettably, Samantha, too many.
And so what's happened to the players in this particular instance? Like, have they been stood down officially or suspended from the game while this investigation takes place?
Well, some of them didn't attend training, I gather, but I would be staggered. I think they won't play this weekend. I just don't see that happening, and very likely they'll be suspended by the club /AFL. I think the AFL and the club will come to some sort of almost an agreement. They can be, of course, suspended under the rules. There's a range of AFL rules I won't bore the listeners with, but, bringing the game into disrepute, conduct unbecoming, there's all sorts of things. It's important, though, that whatever they get suspended with, it not prejudicing a police matter. So those two processes are kept very separate.
Well, I really wanted to ask you about this so-called, bringing the game into disrepute, because it's been reported that, these 5 Sydney Swans players, that's what they're going to be charged with, that they'll miss several matches because they brought the game into disrepute. And are we to understand that disrepute charge is about them being out drinking when normally that's not permitted? Or is it about this allegation of sexual assault?
Well, it can't be about the allegation of the sexual assault. Because that has to be dealt with by the police. And you can't interfere with the laws of the land. The laws of the land come first. It's one of those situations where they have to take action, but at the same time, they can't prejudice what's going to happen in the future. And that the timelines just probably don't match up at all. I mean, typically, I'm not a legal or police expert, but these things take a lot longer than what the season would be, you would say. I mean, they don't get necessarily resolved in months, let alone weeks. So I think you'll see a punishment. They'll get, let's say 2 weeks, and then it'll probably have to be uniform. This is my view of it. It'll probably have to be a uniform punishment, because if it's not uniform, Sam, then it's starting to err on the side of which player is culpable, and that's getting into where the criminal matter lies. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I do want to now ask you a question more broadly about, I guess, the AFL versus the NRL when it comes to handling allegations like this, because your colleague, Age Sports reporter Peter Ryan, has argued that there's a big question that the AFL needs to address now, and that is, of course, whether it needs a no-fault stand-down policy for the code for its players. Obviously, this is something the NRL introduced after a string of allegations were made against its players. So can you, I guess, just talk us through this issue? What does the AFL have in place for instances when players are accused of a crime? And, of course, we have to reiterate, these 5 players that we've spoken about, they haven't been accused of a crime yet. But what does the AFL have in place?
Well, the AFL doesn't have what the NRL has. The NRL has a stand-down policy, which is only triggered above a certain thresholds for crime. The AFL does not have that policy. They have a case-by-case basis. There was a case last year where a Geelong player, Geelong Football Club, Tanner Bruin, he was unnamed. He was on this leave of absence. He was subject to a suppression order. People could see he wasn't playing. It was never mentioned why he wasn't playing. He was essentially stood down by the game, And he was not playing in that period until he was cleared. He was actually cleared of the charge eventually. And but everyone, of course, discovered that it was people could work out what was going on.
And in more breaking news, rape charges against Geelong player Tanner Bruin have been sensationally dropped. The AFL midfielder and his friend Patrick Sinnott were charged with rape after being accused of sexually assaulting a woman.
I guess the bottom line is the AFL follows it doesn't jump in on it to the degree that the NRL does. And it's quite a bit of criticism for not having a stand down policy. It's an interesting debate because what happens if the player is cleared and it takes 3 years? That conceivably can happen. So it's an interesting discussion, but the AFL has chosen, as an organisation, Sam, they're an outfit that likes to maintain flexibility. I've always felt they've always wanted to be able to dispense their own forms of justice. I'm not going to call them arbitrary, and say they make it up as they go along, but they have a tendency to be very pragmatic about outcomes rather than pure.
And just to wrap up, Jake, I wanted to ask you about one broad question, because there's already some frustration out there, including from AFLW player Kate McCarthy, that some of the reporting has focused on the impact on Sydney's finals chances and not on the alleged victim or the sexual assault allegation. So what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think Kate makes a valid point. I made that point on Channel 9 this morning, that the ramifications for the Swans finals is really a secondary point. You've got to consider the alleged victim, and you've got to consider what this is as an incident for people, as opposed to a football club. And I think sometimes that can be lost. But of course, the reason everyone's getting publicity here and everyone's interested in it is because they're football stars, and that's a part of the celebrity culture that sport embraces, for better or worse.
Well, thank you so much, Jake, for your time.
Thanks, Sam.
Today's episode was produced by Tammy Mills, and our podcasts are overseen by Lisa Muxworthy and Tom McKendrick. If you like our show, follow The Morning Edition and leave a review for us on Apple or Spotify. Thanks for listening.